Let's do this. This 30-minute format makes you jump fast. So here we go. Welcome to call number 2 of the case study series. This is exciting. It's already started to do what we hoped it would do. It's already starting conversations. It's already starting to have people think, hey, I didn't apply that this way. I could apply it differently, and trying things on for size, which is crazy fun and crazy exciting. It's also creating conversation and community. And to us, that's the goal. If we can get you to think of neuro in a new way, or think of applying it in a new way, or think of the ability to ask a question that you hadn't asked before, or try it for yourself, or try it for a client or a patient, that's pretty awesome. So welcome to case study call number 2. We're glad you are here. Feel free, as we're going through this, use the chat for questions, use the chat for comments. We are happy to talk through those as best we can as it's happening. The other thing, so today's case study, so the other day's case study was about athletes' performance and actually applying neuro to create athletes' performance. This one today, this case study today is kind of equally as exciting. And so I hope it's going to make you think in new ways. Today's case study, we actually called it From Down and Out to Up and Running, literally. Let me give you a little bit of the backstory on this. Obviously, at this point, 2021 kind of feel, or sorry, 2020, not 2021, 2020 kind of feels like a lifetime ago. It feels like we have gone through the ringer, gone up and down as a world and back and forth, and we're already doing it again. And like in a lot of ways, everything we've been through is very, it's like having an injury that gets poked. It's still kind of fresh, but it's also old. It's both. And so it kind of strikes a nerve in many ways, and yet we've moved on from it. So today's case study, let me take you back in time just a little bit. About October of 2020, at Next Level Neuro, what we kind of figured out is that a lot of the problems that were facing our world after people got COVID, long COVID was becoming a word that was in people's vocabulary. And it was not a term that anybody had ever heard before because it didn't exist before. But what is it when people get this virus and then the virus goes away, but there's all these symptoms afterwards? And our world was suddenly faced with a whole series of problems that they had never really seen before. Now, there are certain worlds, like in the world of ME and CFS, that certain symptoms had been heard of, but it was never as a global conversation. And so in our world, what was introduced is, even at an athletic level, you had people that were supposedly high-performing athletes in their prime, living their life, having a great life. Then they get sick, it's no big deal. And after they get well, suddenly they were still having long-term symptoms that were taking them down worse than the illness itself. And it was a really big deal. And what Matt and I figured out in October of 2020 is that a lot of those symptoms that people were dealing with were actually neurologic problems, not necessarily, or they were neurologic problems manifesting as physiologic problems, not something that was actually still actively happening in the body. So even though the virus had come up and was gone, the lasting impact on the body was a disconnect between the brain and the body. And so it was like, wait a second, why isn't everyone applying a neurologic lens to these problems? And here's the sad, interesting part. It wasn't that a neurologic lens needed to be applied. It was that an applied neurology assessment and training drill, in my opinion, is what needed to be applied. People were having disconnects in blood pressure, in heart rate regulation, in breathing, in sleep, in hunger, all these symptoms that were coming up after the fact, and yet they never had those or never experienced those symptoms before. To me, what was blatantly obvious is we needed to take an understanding of neurology and how to reconnect the brain and the body for better communication. So what you're about to hear today is So in October of 2020, we started a long COVID recovery program. So the case study you're going to hear right now is about one of our athletes that joined the program, who was down and out when she joined the program, and her success story that came about so many weeks later. So hopefully you will be able to take the protocol that we went through with long COVID, again, see application. And I'm going to give you just a tiny bit of insight. When you're hearing this today, think through other viruses that people have that also are impacted in a very similar way. So what you're about to see today does not just apply to COVID and long COVID. It actually applies to a variety of viral illnesses that we face as humanity. So Matt, you ready to take it away?
I am ready. Hi, everyone. Good to see some familiar faces again. The interesting thing about this COVID deal, oops, that's the wrong screen. There we go, is that over 40% of people will have some type of long COVID symptom after being infected by the virus. And the ongoing number of people who experience symptoms like chronic is somewhere between 10% and 20%. So this is something that even though everyone's totally over the COVID thing, like get that in the past, I want to be done with it. Literally millions of people around the world are still living with symptoms like we're going to talk about. And the medical world is, for the most part, not addressing them at their root cause. They're trying to work through symptoms. They're looking at organ systems, but there's not a lot of focus neurologically. And I want to talk a little bit about today why that's so important. So our athlete today, client is named Jen. So meet Jen, Spartan athlete, OCR specialist. A little bit of history about how Jen came to us. She had a multi-year training history already as an obstacle course race. Actually, this photo is from 2017 when she did the Fenway Spartan. But established athlete, she first contracted COVID in November of 2020. Which was initially misdiagnosed as a sinus infection. Her MD actually would not let her test for COVID because he thought it was just a bacterial issue. In the second week of December, she was admitted to the ER with chest pains, difficulty breathing, and cough. That's when she first tested positive. And then her long COVID symptoms began in January of 21. All right. So her primary symptoms, this is Jen with her husband, Greg, joint and body pain. It started initially. Joint pain was so severe that she was unable to walk some days. She was diagnosed by her MD with post-COVID arthritis. Not exactly sure what that is, but that was the diagnosis. And then her ongoing symptoms when she came to us were cough and chest tightness, extreme fatigue, and severe body and joint pain. And she had basically given up full-time work, was having to have help taking care of the kids. Like life was hard at that point. So she came to us in March of 21. But before I talk to you about what happened with Jen, I just want to hit the mechanisms of this long COVID thing really quick and tell you why it's such a neurological issue, okay? So first, there's three here. We're going to go through three different known mechanisms. The first is spike proteins that are binding to ACE2 receptors. Now, you might have to reactivate your research brain from about 3 years ago to remember when everybody was talking about ACE2 receptors. But what ACE2 receptors do is they have an anti-inflammatory function or responsibility to lower inflammatory factors between different cells. They regulate blood pressure, and they protect against foreign invaders like viruses getting into cell bodies or neuron bodies where they can cause infection and organ damage. So when a spike protein binds with an ACE2 receptor, the ACE2 receptor is what lets it into the cell where that viral entry replication can happen, okay? So that's where we start to get cellular damage and the, oh, did I not hit record? I did hit record. We're recording. Okay, thanks, Brandon. This is where the damage starts to take place and the spike protein begins to make changes to the RNA of the host cell. Okay, so that's problem number one. Problem number two is that we start to get further activation of what's called angiotensin 2 receptor. So you can see on the left side of this diagram, the ACE2 pathway is blocked because the spike protein is going to be sitting on that ACE2 receptor. And normally ACE2 breaks down angiotensin 2. which is a molecule that actually causes increased blood pressure and inflammation. So when the ACE2 receptor is blocked, now we get more inflammation, tissue injury, and leaky vessels. So this describes a lot of the local symptomology that was seen at the very first part of long COVID, like tons of inflammation, hyperactive immune system, cytokine storms, all that crazy stuff, okay? But the third mechanism is where I think we were actually ahead of the curve. In June of 2023, so this year, researchers discovered that under the effects of spike protein in that ACE2 receptor, neurons that are affected can fuse together, right? If you've been in neurology for any amount of time, you've heard the old adage that neurons that fire together wire together, but this takes it to a literal level where they're fusing into one single neuron. So this can lead to neurological dysfunction because it's like having the light switch from your kitchen and your bathroom wired together. So you walk into the room and turn on the light switch, maybe both lights turn on, or maybe none of the lights turn on because they're now on one single circuit. So if you can imagine this happening inside of our nervous system and brain, this can lead to huge levels of neurological dysfunction. So the high frequency areas of concern here for this type of fusion are primarily these four. And there's a couple of accessories: that brainstem, which are responsible for symptoms of dysautonomia, cardiovascular issues like heart rate, blood pressure, eye movement problems, vestibular issues, loss of taste and smell, digestive issues, pain, etc. The cerebellum, which is an integration area for vision and vestibular systems. It also regulates muscle tension, and if it doesn't do its job, it's going to result in motor coordination problems. The hypothalamus, which controls our HPA axis, regulates hormones, our stress responses, our sleep cycles, and fatigue. And then the frontal lobe, which is going to induce brain fog, concentration problems, and even despondent thoughts. So these are the four big areas where we see long COVID symptoms come from, okay? And so if these neurons are actually fusing together and they're losing the differentiation of function that they should have, we got major problems, okay? So Kathy was actually the first one to recognize that long COVID was a presentation of neurological dysfunction. And I put that in the chat. It wasn't Kathy and Matt, it was Kathy. But in October of 2020 is when we created our first program, okay? So Jen's beginning recovery process. She started the Neuro recovery group in March of 2021, which was our second cohort to do the group. In case you don't know, Neuro recovery is a 12-week group training program, and we just focus on using applied neuro for the top 12 symptoms of long COVID and their neurological points of origin, which are brainstem, cerebellum, amygdala, thalamus, hypothalamus, and prefrontal cortex. So if you know your neuroanatomy and your function, you'll be able to connect the dots with us as we go through the rest of this. If you don't know those yet, that's okay. You'll pick up some along the way, and then you can learn some more in some of our webinars and other programs. But when Jen started with us in March of 21, she was still suffering daily from joint pain, chest pain, tightness, chronic fatigue, and brain fog, okay? So here's a quick list of her high payoff exercises. And the typical protocol for these is 4 to 5 times a day. What you're going to see on each one of those is the name of the exercise and then the neurological areas that are affected or activated. So what we're trying to do here is turn these brain areas back on, like reconnect them, but also just begin to differentiate them from other connections or surrounding areas. So we're cleaning up their activation, okay? So ball of foot bouncing exercise for the vestibular system was number 1. Lateral shifting, also for the vestibular system, was number 2. These are focusing on the saccule and the utricle, which, if you know the vestibular system, those are the otolith organs that tell you what direction you're moving, where gravity is, and they're also responsible for a lot of autonomic function. So getting those back online is really important for dealing with our dysautonomia and getting the brainstem connected to higher parts of the brain, okay? Number 3 is bag breathing. So oxygen utilization goes haywire when we get this neuronal fusion happening. We get cardiovascular problems, pulmonary issues. So bag breathing is a great way to quickly increase CO2 which is going to push more oxygen into our cells to be utilized. It also starts to train your CO2 threshold, which is activated by chemoreceptors that are both in the lungs and in the medulla. So the respiratory control centers that are in the brainstem are some of the primary targets here. So we want to get the breathing under control by looking at the brainstem and by helping her regain her CO2 thresholds. So that's why bag breathing. Burst breathing is a really similar drill. It's very fast, very shallow, where we're specifically training the integration or kind of the pathways between the prefrontal cortex and those respiratory control centers. So kind of stacking on with the breathing skills right there. Okay. Number 5 and 6 have to do with their visual system. And I think these were so good for Jen because they have such a nice relaxing effect on not only the visual system, but also on the thalamus, the amygdala, the hypothalamus, the midbrain. Like all these areas get to relax when you do these drills. And when you're in a state of constant threat or constant neural dysfunction, those brain areas that are perceiving threat and responding to stress, they're overactivated all the time. So she began to use the vision drills here as a way to calm those down. Okay, give them a break during the day. Number 7 is a vagus nerve stimulus using an acupressure pin on the left ear. We call that the zappy zappy because it's a little electrical current that you can apply to the skin. But that external auricular branch of the vagus nerve, you can hit that with that electrical stimulus and get a really nice vagal activation to kind of calm down the sympathetic system, reduce inflammation, restore breathing control. Really, really nice input. And it's kind of a passive tool. You're just sticking it to your ear rather than doing an exercise. Okay. Number 8, another breathing drill, high-low breathing. So we're doing diaphragm activation here, utilizing actions of the phrenic nerve, the vagus nerve, and those brainstem respiratory centers again. That one's a more relaxing breathing drill. It's nice and slow, deep breathing. And then she's going to move into some more active drills to finish up. So balance progression, some of you know that one. It's basically an activation of all of the semicircular canals, but it also integrates with a lot of the vestibular reflexes. So you can integrate it with your vestibulo-ocular reflex if you want to, vestibulospinal reflex. It integrates really well with proprioception and kind of knowing where you are in space and maintaining your balance and equilibrium. So for her as an athlete, this was one of the drills that we wanted in her high payoff exercises, assuming that they were going to test okay, because we wanted her to get back to athletic movement as quickly as possible. Not just slow walking around in the house, like day-to-day activities, but to go from being bedridden or couch-ridden back on her feet and running these obstacle course races as quickly as possible. So the balance progression kind of leans in that direction, okay? And then the last one, it was compass lunges. Again, an integration drill here where we're putting together visual, vestibular, proprioceptive inputs, activating her cerebellum, her brainstem, and her prefrontal cortex. But again, doing those in an athletic way to move her back toward getting on her feet and performing rather than just scraping by, okay? So the typical practice protocol is 4 to 5 times a day. Going through all of those drills would probably take her, I would guess, maybe 6 to 7 minutes altogether. So we're accruing somewhere between 25 and 35 minutes of practice per day. Okay? That's how it works out. So quick results from Jen. Here's a photo. So in March of 21, right as she started the program, within the first couple of weeks, her chest tightness and cough let up. Those started to disappear. Chronic fatigue left in April, May 21. So she's still within that first 12 weeks. Right at the end of the 12 weeks, the pain subsided. So those are her big 3 primary symptoms. They're all gone right around that 12 to 14 week mark from when she started. But here's the big one. In July 2021, she completes the Beast, which is a super distance Spartan race. It's a half marathon on the mountain with obstacles. Okay. So remember, March 21, she couldn't walk. July 21, she finishes a half marathon. All right. And her greatest accomplishment from this wasn't just finishing, but successfully doing the rope climb. She said she had only completed that once before having COVID. So to get back to that level of strength and performance, she was just over the moon. Right. So here's a picture of Jen with her mom after completing. She went on to do 3 more races in 2021. She competed in 22 and in 23 seasons. So she's still active as a Spartan athlete, and she still practices those high payoff drills daily, she said. So quick note from her. She sent this over last night just to prepare for this. And she said, I connected with Next Level Neuro through the long COVID recovery, but the drills, coaching, and support have been helpful in every aspect of my life. I've told Matt before that I can't imagine life without him. He's more valuable than any doctor has been. The drills gave me a way to manage, and I'm better able to control and improve various barriers or challenges. It's empowering to have tools that I can incorporate into my daily routine that make a real difference in how I feel and perform. So big congratulations to Jen. She's amazing. And truly, I don't want to take responsibility for her recovery because she did the work. She was motivated. She was very intentional. And she stayed on top of her exercises and her training. So I just want to say congratulations to her. That's it. Kathy, you want to jump back in?
So Jen is one of those clients that we all want to have, because she not only learned from the program and grew from the program and created so many things for her own life and her own getting back to what she wanted, but in the years since then, she has actually contributed a huge amount to the programs, from her note taking to her organizational skills to working with other people within the program. She's one of those type of clients that you love to have. So I appreciate, Matt, that you said, kind of shout out to her, because she did the work. We guided the direction, she did the work. And she kind of holds a special place in our heart because of how intentional she was at getting back to her life. The body she had built had earned the right to succeed at a high level. And yet the virus took her, it created that brain-body disconnect and put her into a space where her body could no longer do what she knew she was capable of doing. So 2 primary things happened in her recovery and in this case study is that not only did we reconnect the brain and body, but we kind of gave her other drills that connected the brain and body in ways that it hadn't been before, right? The reason you start to see fast results is because sometimes there's just a wiring disconnect in, like, you're prepping the body, you're doing all the right things, but why can't I do a pull-up? Or in Jen's case, why can't I climb the rope more easily? I'm doing all the work I need to do. All the prep work is there, but the result isn't happening. Sometimes it's a matter of going, which switch in the brain needs to be turned on to give my body permission to do this. And when you find that switch and you turn it on, boom, the result is super fast. I wanted to share like 2 thoughts from this for you guys to think about, so that you know maybe where to apply this information this week. Number 1, I have never in my life been so thankful to be a generalist and not a specialist. One of the primary things that we saw happen with long COVID and COVID in general is that people were such specialists in their field that I wasn't the only one that saw there was a neurologic problem and deficit that were happening. No, that happened around the world. But people were being, like Jen, people were being sent to their neurologist, and their neurologist was a specialist, let's say in peripheral neuropathy, or their neurologist is a specialist in different disease processes. The brain is so big and so complex and so powerful that in our community, in our health community, people often specialize to get really good at what they do. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in this case, when you talk about a pandemic around the world, I am thankful that we had the knowledge of applied neurology from a very generalist perspective, understanding kind of the brain, understanding the brain pathways, understanding the cranial nerves, understanding the systems of the body and what order they communicate in an organized fashion. gives you the ability to take a step back. And when Jen's like, well, I'm in bed, I can't breathe. If I go upstairs, I can breathe just fine. But the minute I'm at the top of the stairs, I can't breathe at all. And I feel really tired, but I'm sleeping a lot. And when your clients talk to you, you have the ability to take that step back, hear that information, and take it in and go, okay, wait a minute, which part of the brain is responsible for this? Which cranial nerve is responsible for that? Which part of the body is responsible for that? Let's put that together. And can we give you a drill sequence that will reconnect the brain and body's communication pathways? Because the biggest thing, in my opinion, of what happens with a viral illness like this is that the brain is still, it's a miswiring. It's a misinterpretation that needs to be corrected. And it's like, it's almost as if the brain needs more information to talk to the body, to know when to get tired or when to get hungry or when to be able to breathe more or breathe less. The brain needs more information. And normally it would send a signal and the brain and body would respond together accurately or appropriately. Well, COVID kind of breaks that connection. And so the brain's going, I need more. And the body's going, I'm giving you everything I've got. The brain may be saying, I can't get enough air. And so the human is responding by going, I need to breathe more. I need to breathe more. I need to breathe more. The feeling is not accurate for what the body actually needs. Like in Jen's case, for example, the brain needed a better utilization of oxygen and CO2. But the brain keeps sending the signal, I need more. So the person keeps breathing more and the body's going, no, I need to use it. I can't use it. Right? That's a very generic example, but it kind of gives you the best idea of the problem that people will come to you that they think is the problem may not be the problem. So your goal as the coach is to understand what brain areas are involved, what cranial nerves may be impacted, what, if I pull back, what are they actually telling me is wrong? Not what are they feeling or what are they thinking? Because in this particular case, I'm only going to tell you this because I really believe in people's ability to get well and know what they need. In this particular case of viral disconnect, you need to actually track what are the symptoms and what are they feeling, not just what they think they need. Like Jen would have told you, I'm not getting enough air, I'm not getting enough air. But it was only through assessment that we were able to say, you're getting a lot of air, your body can't use it, right? And that's the critical difference. So anyway, I think kind of that's all I have to think about today. Matt, hopefully we are sharing the slides with everybody, right?
Yeah.
Good.
We didn't post the ones from the first case study, but there's no reason that we can't.
Okay. Yeah, let's share the slides so that they can begin to think about how to put that together, right?
Sure.
How to put the before and the after together. Any thoughts on, I know, and this is funny, but maybe next Thursday as we do this, maybe we'll try to breathe in our presentation so that you can actually, it's a good thing you have the replay so that you can play it on slower speed.
I thought there was going to be a little too much info, so next time I'll breathe.
That's okay. I think both of us are going through really fast. Watch the replay if you need it. Look at the brain areas impacted. Ask yourself, what would you have done? What would you have done? And do you have questions about what her symptoms were and what actions we took, right? Feel free to communicate with that with us this week. If you have any questions and you want to put them in the chat real quick, or if you want to share anything, we have about a 30-second countdown until we have to jump off and Matt has to get on another training call. Last thing I will tell you, this Thursday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, this Thursday, we're going to do another case study, but this case study is about how do you build your business when you need to, when you're in growing something about when you're adding applied neurology to your business, how do you actually take that information and grow your business with it? Because if you're going to be a generalist in applied neurology so that you're really skilled, growing your business isn't easy. So we wanted to put in a case study of how do you build your business when you're going to become someone who specializes in applied neurology. All right. Hopefully we will see you all Thursday. Matt, anything they need to know before they go?
Thanks for being here, everybody. We'll see you Thursday.
All right.
It's going to be
Take
awesome.
care, all. Have a great day.
Bye.